Okay, good morning everyone. This is J.D. Seal and I'm Vice President at Skyview Partners, and I want to welcome you today to our session on the top 5 single sign-on Mythbuster myths. We're honored to have our very special guest and good friend of Carol's, Mr. Patrick Botz, is our presenter today. Single sign-on is a phrase that everyone uses, but few bother to define. This leads to invalid assumption, confusion, and often failure to gain approval for SSO implementation projects. In this webinar, security expert Patrick Botz will explain the top 5 misconceptions associated with single sign-on, why they aren't true, and how to debunk them for good so you can confidently achieve SSO. Today's session is sponsored by Skyview Partners, and we're happy to have you with us today. Thank you for joining us. Here at Skyview Partners, we're committed to delivering products and services that provide our customers with not only sound advice, but also saves them time, reduces the cost, and simplifies the management of security compliance and those daily security administration tasks for IBMI and open systems. Today's presenter, Patrick Botz, is the President and CTO of Botz & Associates. Patrick is the former lead security architect at IBM, and also the founder of IBM Lab Services security consulting team, as well as architect of the SSO solution for OS 400 and i5OS. So I think you're going to find this extremely interesting today. Solutions available from Skyview Partners include our software solutions, Skyview Risk Assessor, our diagnostic tool. If you haven't done an independent third-party review, I highly recommend that you contact us about getting a run of Risk Assessor. Skyview Policy Minder, our automated security administration tool. It will save you time. The Audit Journal Reporter, which are predefined auditor-ready reports from the Audit Journal, reports designed by Carol Woodbury. And now our Skyview Policy Minder for IBM Open Systems, AIX, and Linux. And keep in mind that Skyview Partners software is available on unlimited software licenses. Skyview also provides a variety of services, including security checkups. We will review your Risk Assessor reports one-on-one with you and give you a personalized deliverable, as well as managed services for compliance reporting and special re-architecture and remediation services on a statement of work basis. So if you'd like to have that, please contact us at any time. With that, I'd like to start today's presentation on top 5 single sign-on Mythbuster myths and change the presenter to Patrick. Good morning, Patrick.
Good morning, JD, and thank you. Let's see, there. How's that working?
Looks great.
All right, thank you. And good morning, everyone. And I'm giving everyone time to say good morning back, even though nobody can hear me. I'm excited to be here today to take over Carol's Coffee with Carol moment for just today. I asked Carol if she would change it for today, Coffee with Carol's best friend, Pat, but she decided not to do that. Today we're going to talk about something that's near and dear to my heart, and that is some of the misconceptions and misunderstandings that I run into when talking with customers and people at conferences about single sign-on. It turns out there's a lot of misconceptions out there, and I picked a couple of my favorite to talk about today. I'm going to try and leave time for questions at the end of the webcast, so if you have any questions, please make sure that you type them in. And since it's sort of difficult for me to see questions as they come in, we will handle those questions all of them at the end. Okay, so let's get right into them. Myth number 1. Excuse me. SSO is SSO is SSO. what I found is, in talking to people, is that there's this idea that when anybody says single sign-on or SSO, they're all talking about the same exact thing. They're talking about a specific solution that works, then they all work in the same way. In other words, that if it's SSO, then it's providing a specific function. And the fact is that there's actually many different kinds of single sign-on, and some of them are just different underneath the covers. Some of them are different in the experience for the end users. And these are some of the examples here. Probably the most common assumption that's made when the term SSO is used is that we're talking about making user IDs and passwords the same everywhere. Now, turns out there's two different flavors of that. One, just password synchronization, makes the user IDs and passwords the same everywhere in an attempt to make it less likely that end users will forget the right information when they are prompted. And then there's another version of that that tries to eliminate the prompts in addition to synchronizing the passwords. And by making the passwords the same everywhere, then it makes it easier for the SSO application to know what information to pass underneath the covers to sign them in. Another version of SSO that we used to hear a lot about, and we don't hear about it anymore because it turned out it wasn't all that workable, is that if we all would just use something called LDAP, Lightweight Directory Access Protocol, everywhere, then we would just have a single user ID and password repository. By doing that, there would be only one place that the user ID and password was stored, only one place to change your password. There wouldn't be a need for any synchronization. And the problem, though, was getting every application and every operating system that was ever built previously and were being built to use LDAP, and it turned out that wasn't viable. And then another way to address single sign-on is to use a protocol entirely different from the user ID password protocol, one that's designed for distributed computing, and Kerberos is one of those. Kerberos is a protocol that is available on nearly every platform, and it's available in a fair number of applications. So the facts about this particular myth is that different products or services, and I typically will use the term solutions, so I don't say products and services all the time. So different single sign-on solutions provide SSO in different ways, and depending on the way that it provides it, the end user experience can be much different. So there isn't just one definition of single sign-on. All of these approaches have advantages, all have disadvantages, and it turns out that I haven't yet found an SSO solution that works for everything everywhere. Which brings us to myth 2. I call this the "if it ain't perfect, it ain't worth diddly" myth. And this myth says something like, if the single sign-on solution I'm contemplating doesn't work for everything in my environment, then it's not suitable for anything in my environment myth. What I often find is that administrators, typically a manager will come to an administrator and ask the administrator to, hey, look into the single sign-in stuff. And the administrator, who is already overworked and already has too much stuff on his plate or her plate, puts it on the plate with everything else, and the first thing they do is they try to find a reason for why SSO won't work in their environment. And typically that means finding a specific application or a situation in which single sign-on won't work, and then they go back to the boss and say, yep, won't work here. And that is understandable on a couple of different levels. The first level is, if you're already overworked, you sure as heck don't want to have more stuff to do. And the other one is that by its very definition, single sign-on, if it doesn't really end up in single sign-on, then it must not work. So this myth is understandable to me, but in a moment we'll talk about why it's not a valid myth. So as an example of what I was talking about before, you may have an environment where each of your end users uses Telnet, they use a web application and a third-party product. Well, if the solution you're looking at, again, product or service you're looking at, doesn't eliminate the login to Telnet, only works for the login to Telnet in the web application, but doesn't work for the third-party product, then that's a reason why that solution doesn't work and isn't quote-unquote useful in your environment. But the fact is that single sign-on is actually a solution to a business problem. Single sign-on isn't the problem you're trying to solve. The problem you're trying to solve is the very high cost of managing user IDs and passwords in your organization. And those costs typically come 90+% from just managing passwords. And by managing passwords, what I mean is the cost to change those passwords periodically, and then the cost of to the end user when they're not able to sign in to a application or system or whatever after the change, and also the cost of the help desk or administrative time of helping them debug what the problem is and then fixing it for them. So, since SSO is a business problem, the whole problem is about the cost that is involved in managing passwords. So if you can find some solution that solves part of the problem in a way that provides significant return on investment to your organization, then that is in fact a viable solution. Now, return on investment, or ROI, is a highfalutin term, but basically what it is that it's a comparison between the cost of a solution and the value that that solution brings to the organization in return in terms of the reduced cost of managing some problem. Now, at the Botz & Associates website, we provide the single sign-on ROI calculator. It's totally independent. It's not meant to point you to any specific solution or anything. It mainly allows you to put in assumptions about the cost of managing passwords, and it allows you to do that in terms of how many users you have, the number of user IDs per person, the average amount of time that it takes to change a password, those sorts of things. And it will tell you how much your organization is spending over time on managing passwords. And it is just as accurate as your assumptions that you put in. And then another part of it, the other part of it, is where you fill in assumptions about your solution based on the cost to manage acquire the solution, implement the solution, and manage the solution over time. And from those two different pieces of information, your current cost, the cost of the solution, it will help you understand when your return on investment becomes positive and how positive that might be over time. So the message here is that just because a particular product or service that you're looking at doesn't take care of all of your passwords or all of your sign-on situations, that doesn't mean that it isn't necessarily a significant value for your company. So there's a corollary to this myth, and that is, if one solution doesn't work for everything, then there is no solution. And there's an example that I use for this, and I've run into this sort of misunderstanding in many different areas of security, not just in single sign-on. And the analogy I use is a car mechanic saying that if one solution doesn't work for everything, then it isn't a solution, or there is no solution, is similar to a car mechanic saying that, well, I used to use a wrench to fix cars, but I found out that I kept running into a need for screwdrivers, so I got rid of the wrench, which obviously doesn't make any sense. And the same is true in security. And all security mechanisms, including SSO solutions, they're just tools in your security toolbox, and you want to use the right set of tools to solve a particular problem. And just like in fixing a car, oftentimes you're going to need more than one tool to address a specific issue. So the facts for the corollary are that using multiple solutions is not inherently bad. And you have to consider the cost to acquire, implement, and manage all of the solutions in your return on investment analysis. And if using multiple tools, 2, 3, however many, to get to the environment that you want, provides a significant return on investment, then using multiple tools or multiple solutions is perfectly viable.
Pat, this is JD. For some reason, lost your audio.
Oh, I'm sorry. I coughed and I forgot to turn it back on. I'll go over that. It started.
Back one slide would be great.
This slide?
Yes.
Okay. We finished this one, right?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. All right. I apologize. I have a cold. There's been some kind of cold going around here in Rochester, and I've started coming down with it. So back to myth 3. What a concern I often hear from people about SSO is that we have such a tight operation that we can't risk any kind of downtime. We want to avoid any possible risk of downtime, and the assumption on their part is that implementing SSO is bound to be disruptive. And in terms of this myth, disruptive can mean time-consuming, where they've got too much other stuff to do and they don't have time to spend on this, they can't let the other stuff go, etc. It could mean the potential for downtime during implementation, or it could just mean I don't have time to learn how to do it. But no matter what definition of disruptive people use, the idea is that SSO can't be implemented in my shop because of things like this. Well, the fact is that SSO solutions are very different, and how disruptive or whether they're disruptive or not is very solution dependent. The concept of managed SSO services, where somebody comes in and implements SSO for you and then provides some kind of support over time, those services can actually be quite undisruptive. Oftentimes it allows you to roll out the SSO solution incrementally on a person-by-person or department-by-department basis. And oftentimes when you have somebody who understands how everything works across multiple platforms, etc., the configuration can be relatively fast. And depending on the type of SSO, which we discussed in myth 1, the configuration itself can be totally non-disruptive. So single sign-on, the implementation of single sign-on does not have to be disruptive. Another assumption that I run into all the time is myth number 4, that single sign-on is going to be hard to manage, that it's very complex, and because of its complexities, it's got to be hard to manage. And I'm not going to be able to do that with everything else that I've got going on. Some of the reasons for these misconceptions is the very nature of single sign-on being cross-platform. Lots of times the solutions, whether it's a product or a service, exploits lots of lower level technologies that the average administrator has never dealt with in the past. May be technologies that your organization isn't currently using. And also, again, just the sheer workload that administrators have, just the idea of having yet another thing that they might have to debug and learn and figure out becomes a daunting task. Excuse me. Well, the facts are that, again, the SSO implementation is very dependent on the solution you choose and whether you choose a solution or a managed service. And the stability of the solution that you choose, as well as the way in which it's implemented, is also going to play a role in how disruptive or non-disruptive a particular solution is going to be. Again, managed SSO services can take fear out of the unknown out of your equation, and as well as a decent product type solution is something that is well implemented, has a good reputation, and has a lot of users. They oftentimes won't be nearly as disruptive to implement as a person might assume. Myth number 5, SSO is expensive. Now, this is one that I run into all the time. There's an assumption that that SSO is a hard problem to solve, so any solution is going to be very expensive. And some solutions are expensive to implement, to acquire, or to manage over time, or all three. And oftentimes the cost of a solution, or a solution will be designed or architected for larger enterprises, so when they try to scale those costs down to SMB type organizations, those costs don't scale real well, so something that an enterprise might be able to afford isn't always affordable to the smaller organizations. Again, the facts are that each solution is different. Its implementation and approach is going to be different, and some are going to be expensive, but lots of solutions are very affordable. And partial solutions and multiple solutions are oftentimes your best approach, and they are oftentimes very affordable. The important thing is that you understand what your specific requirements are for SSO, because SSO is not a single definition of a single problem that everybody has, but rather it's a class of problems. Oftentimes you'll find a product that is very good at providing single sign-on to web-based applications or web server-based applications. Sometimes there are solutions out there that are very good at providing SSO to external websites, and some are good at providing SSO to internal platforms and or internal applications. The thing that I find most often, though, is a truism, actually, is that I have yet to run into any specific solution that covers 100% of anybody's environment. So you may find a solution, a single solution that provides very good ROI and choose to use only that solution, or you may choose to combine a couple of different approaches. You might combine a managed service perhaps with a product from a third-party vendor. The important thing in order to determine what's right for you is to do a return on investment once you have generated the list of your specific requirements. Then you can compare each solution to that list of requirements and make a sound and valuable business decision based on the return on investment for whatever your ultimate solution for your organization is. And we have one bonus myth today, and I hear this one a lot too, is that single sign-on isn't secure. Can't possibly be secure because right now we force our users to have multiple different passwords, and that's going to make it harder for any attacker or anyone to take advantage of breaking a single password. Another way I often hear this is, well, geez, what if our users walk away from their desktop? Anybody can come in and click on the icon, and they'll be in the IBM I under that user. So some other examples of why people think it won't be secure is that the attacker only has to hack or crack a single password, and if they get the person's network password, which is most often their Windows domain password, then they'll be able to get into any system as that user. Another argument I've heard is that, well, single sign-on makes my entire network dependent on the Windows password and Windows security, and I don't trust that. Well, the fact is that if you have a Windows domain today and people in that Windows domain can connect to your IBM I, you're already dependent on Windows security, whether you believe it or not. And the reason for that is that hackers or crackers, if they are able to somehow access a workstation within that domain, however they choose to do that, the first thing they're going to try and do is put some malware on that system that is like a keystroke grabber, a video recorder, and they're just as likely to learn the other user IDs and passwords for that person as somebody would be to be able to walk by the workstation and click on an icon. So the argument here is that you've already accepted the risk, whatever risk that is, of having your IBM I in the same network as a Windows domain, and by using single sign-on in that domain or in that network, you're not accepting any more risk than your organization has already chose to accept. The user ID and password protocol is known and widely known to be the weakest form of authentication that we have. And other protocols have actually been designed for distributed computing networks. Kerberos happens to be one. CAS is another one. But those protocols are also widely known to be much stronger than user IDs and passwords. Now, are they perfect? No. But are they much better? Are they much stronger? Yes. So from a business point of view, since single sign-on is a business problem, solutions must be able to achieve a positive return on investment, and as long as they introduce no more risk than what you currently do, then those are viable solutions. And I think it's very easy to argue that single sign-on, most single sign-on solutions introduce no new and or additional risk that your organization hasn't already chosen to accept. Now, there are several other misconceptions and misunderstandings that people have about single sign-on, and we're not going to go into them today. These are the most common ones that I've run into over time. So just recapping the myths, all single sign-on solutions do not provide the same function. Some of them get rid of prompts, attempt to get rid of the actual prompt. Some of them try to just synchronize passwords. Some of them introduce different new protocols which may or may not get rid of all of the prompts or some of the prompts. The second myth is if a product or service doesn't work for everything, then it's not useful for anything. And the response to this is that single sign-on is a business issue. It is not a technical issue. And from a technical point of view, it's easy to say that if one specific thing isn't handled by a solution, then it's not a solution. But from a business point of view, it's all about return on investment. If you can get a partial solution that saves the company a lot of money over the time, then that's a great solution. Implementing SSO is too disruptive. Well, we talked about the fact that that really depends on the solution you're choosing, and there are some solutions that are very non-disruptive and actually can be implemented incrementally and can that actually provide virtually zero disruption to your end services or even to your administrators. Myth 4, single sign-on solutions are hard to manage. Again, solution independent. Obviously, a managed SSO service that removes that requirement from you is the most obvious answer to this myth. But there are also products out there that are fairly easy to manage or are self-managed by the end users themselves. SSO is expensive, again, solution dependent. Integration with Active Directory is often very inexpensive because you don't have to create an entirely new repository of user IDs and passwords that are used for the solution. You've already got that because you're managing your users through Active Directory. And the bonus myth, single sign-on is not secure. I argue very strongly that single sign-on is actually more secure than using user IDs and passwords, but from a business point of view, a solution just has to be no more risky or introduce no additional risk than what you have today. So JD, that brings me to the end of my portion.
Okay, wow, what a great presentation. I can hear the applause on the other end. If you do have questions, please type them into the dialog box now. If you'd like more information after the session, you can always contact us at skyviewpartners.com. I want to thank everyone for joining us